Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our first panel discussion on the topic cloud security. It is my privilege to invite on stage the panel of speakers for the session. Ms. Madhavi, CISO, ICICI Bank Limited. Shri Lalit Kumar, Head of Security India, AWS India. Shri Dusmanta Kesari Patra, Deputy CISO and DGM CISD, PNB. And our moderator for this session, Shri Terence Gomes, Partner, PwC.
Good morning, everyone. We're going to be talking about evolution of cloud over the last few years and the role of the CISO in that. I have my fellow panelists. I'll ask them to quickly introduce themselves. And while we get started, we want to kind of deliberate on this topic, hear from them, their learnings, what's worked for them, what suggestions they would have. Most of you are at different levels in your organizations in terms of cloud adoption, right? So it'll be good to kind of learn from them. And at the same time, if there are any specific questions that you would like to bring up during the panel, feel free. We have time for questions and answers. So we would love to kind of hear from you and get your perspective. So with that, if I may invite ma'am, if you could quickly, share a few words with our audience, please.
Yeah, so I'll give an introduction, as you said.
Absolutely.
I'm Madhavi. I have been with ICICI Bank since 99. Sounds like a different generation altogether. While I have, by education, I'm a finance person. I was interested in technology early in the career, so I moved to technology, and I have done those early days. Is some of you would know banking automation, where there would be a server in the branch, and you will have one machine doing one set of product like an SB or saving. From there, here we are today. From technology, then I moved to cybersecurity function.
Thank you, ma'am. Lalit?
Hello, everyone. My name is Lalit Kumar. I'm with AWS. I head security function in AWS. It's been more than 10 years I've been with AWS. So I've seen the evolution of security and various conversation around how regulated workloads are moving to cloud. So there's a lot around the evolution of security in the CSP that I would like to share today.
Thank you, Lalit. Mr. Patra?
Good morning. I am Dusmanta Kesari Patra. I am Deputy CISO of Punjab National Bank. And we are only believing on the hands-on experience on the CISOs. So we believe in the CISO 2.0, which we manage 30 systems, 30 security systems, cybersecurity system in our control. So that end-to-end security is complied and maintained to protect the bank's IT infrastructure. So mostly we believe in the hands-on experience and the configuring, preventing, detecting, preventing, and managing the entire security stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Patra. So friends, I think in terms of cloud, I think there is no questions or thoughts in our minds, depending on, where we are in our journey. There are a lot of deliberations about the advantages of cloud, as well as the opportunities that it brings to our businesses. But at the same time, what are the challenges? What are the concerns? What are the watch outs we need to have in mind from a security and compliance standpoint, right? So if I may, I have, as I said, we've got Madhavi ma'am from ICICI Bank, we've got Mr. Patra from Punjab National Bank, and we've got Lalit from, representing the industry from AWS Cloud. I'm going to be calling on them to kind of share just an opening remark about their journey in the cloud. How have they looked at cloud from their respective organization standpoint? What are the things that that go into making a decision of moving any application into cloud, and their function more from an information security standpoint? So, ma'am, if I may invite you first to share your perspective on how the bank is looking at cloud adoption and the role that the CISO organization and function plays, and anything you would like to add on top of that, please.
Okay. So I would say cloud adoption is a journey, and the journey continues. In terms of adoption, I would say if the question would have been asked, say 6 years ago, saying, are you going on cloud? I think it was a choice, saying that we will not do anything on cloud. That could have been there. But today, if you see the way industry is moving, the way products are moving, a lot of product offerings don't exist on-prem. Or if they exist, then the new developments happen for cloud edition, whereas on-prem edition may be coming later or may not be coming at all. It may be stalled at some point in time. So we believe and cloud does have a lot of advantages that it brings on table. I believe that cloud, we should look at any other new technology. Every new technology with it brings its advantages. But we are at the end of the day bankers, and our business is on trust. So you don't get overwhelmed by all the light around technology. You use the technology for the purpose if it fits in with your organizational goals. Having said this, I would say generally any technology, you would start slow, you would start experimenting the technology, you would start understanding it better, you will start feeling and sensing it, as he said, that hands-on. Once you build the skills within your organization and you're comfortable in terms of a visibility on what are the risks and to what extent are we ready to take the risk, then you start the journey. Similar has been our journey as well.
Thank you, ma'am. And I really liked, what you said. It's finally about the trust, right? And that is the number one principle that goes into making any decision in terms of whether we move a certain application or a function to the cloud, and what are the guardrails we put into that. And all of that has to abide by that principle of trust, and that is where then the CISO function and the role and the guidance comes in. I'd like to draw on the experience from AWS and my panelist Lalit. Lalit, you've been in the industry as a service provider, and on the industry side. How are you enabling the banking community in India to adopt cloud in a secure and compliant way? And what are the initiatives AWS is taking to kind of, help the bank get up to speed and be on top of their, agenda of the trust agenda and the consumer agenda?
I'll just first extend what Madhavi ma'am said. Before looking at the cloud, we would also like to look at our applications, the need of our application. The modernization and digital transformation is not very well possible on-prem environment probably, because the paradigm has changed, our requirement has changed, the technology around us has changed, and cloud accelerate all these technology. So that's why, because it's my application requirement. Our architecture has changed completely from web-centric, from SOA to now completely API-driven. So if my application is completely API-driven, I need to have new computing paradigm. I need to have a newer capability which are delivered much faster in cloud. So that's a primary reason, and cloud and digital transformation go hand in hand. Now coming to how banking application can move with confidence and securely in AWS or any other CSP is, the three basic lenses to look at it. The very first one is reducing the attack surface. Are we considering the right kind of guardrails when deploying a solution in cloud? Now, these guardrails could be coming from regulatory requirements like data localization. Data should not move out of India. It should be stored within India. So the very first guardrail becomes that I only restrict my workload to be running into India region. Then there are certain actions which are not required. Cloud service provider have plethora of services, but a banking application may be requiring only 20 services. So I restrict all those services. Along with this, one is hardening the attack surface. The second is getting more visibility. The whole promise of cloud is to have higher degree of visibility. There are newer concepts which are coming in, which is called Cloud Security Posture Management Module. So all kind of misconfigurations get reported there. So the very first thing that's been done while migrating the workload is a creation of a landing zone. A landing zone is where I have reduced my attack surface as per my application requirement, as per my regulatory compliance requirement. And then I also create a visibility layer on any kind of configuration changes in my cloud environment. So that's become the basic starting point. And the third one is detecting all unknown threats. Now that becomes challenging. How do I detect unknown? I can prevent the known threats by following best practices, guidelines, and I have visibility on that. But detecting the unknown threats becomes a challenge. That's where the logging and before us, Mr. Kulshrestha was talking about the SOC and threat hunting practices. Setting up the right visibility traces on logs and analyzing threat hunting becomes a much more better solution. Apart from this, one of the emerging trend is doing deception on your workload, because as our workloads are changing, so is the attack pattern in the cloud. So deception technology also plays a huge part. When you're putting up a workload over internet, then we could also put a dummy workload and understand what kind of a new attack patterns are coming our way.
Yeah, right.
Thanks, Lalit. That was helpful. I think you covered a lot of points. One, as both ma'am said and Lalit said, there are many applications today that are only available in the cloud. So sometimes you have no option but to kind of look at them if that makes business sense and if that makes sense to your consumers and to your customers. And in that case, if business is coming back and saying we need to onboard that, then we kind of need to make it happen. And when I was speaking with Mr. Patra, he mentioned about their journey onto the cloud, especially starting from the erstwhile email applications. I think there are organizations in the room who are at different journeys. Some of us have been using Microsoft Cloud or Google Security or the email securities for many years and are much ahead of the curve. And some of us are just migrating, and some of us are talking about it. If I may ask Mr. Patra, your experience about moving into the cloud with some of these applications which are now no longer available on-prem, and you have to move them eventually. If you can share your experience, your learnings, what's working well, what could improve.
Good, thank you. Actually, the cloud adoption, when it was in the started journey, in that time we have seen that it was the cost reduction, agility, and the availability. The cost reduction is not happening. What our experience that it is growing up, because when we go for agility and the continuity, business continuity, yes, it is okay. But when we add all those things, let us say one of the system has been completely surrendered that we cannot provide these services in the on-prem, we have to move to the cloud. In that case, we have never seen the security aspect of that. Yes, my business should be run on the cloud, I had to move to the cloud. Then by seeing what is called the future requirement, we have gone to that cloud vendor with my business requirement. Now, second thing is that I have to go for the security. How I will enable security on top of that? Then the problem comes. Then we have to enable the cloud native platform, which is additional cost. The cost is compared to the on-prem and cloud is much higher. So again, the collaborative between that CNPP provider and the cloud vendor. So that agility has to become. So the understanding all the things. Let us say I have to put a SOC, the SIEM, which captures log. But how it takes the logs, whether I have done the advanced settings so that I can take a complete visibility of what is happening in my system. But if I do that, then there is an extra resources, which is may be a problem with that CSP, that I may consume more resources on that. So those points has to be cleanly dotted down before moving to the cloud. But it is not happening, because sometimes, yes, there is no time, we have to go cloud, then you take the system in the nomination basis. Being a PSU bank and a PSU service holder, there are a lot of problems. I cannot go to the nomination basis. I have to justify many of the things that how I can go to that cloud service on the nomination. Again, the RFPs and other things doesn't come to a point. Let us, I am giving an example for the O365. Initially, we moved to the O365. Then there is a requirement of the MDM, how MDM can be enabled. In case of I take a MDM from the other vendor and using the O365, there is also a problem. In case of I go for the MDM with that same platform, then it is becoming a nomination based purchase. Like that, I will take a SMTP filter. SMTP filter comprises of DLP and the spam filtering, which is another concept which gives a protection to the O365 mailbox. So in case of I take it from what is called Microsoft, he is having another cost. In case of I route to the Broadcom or any of the problems, any of the vendor, that is a higher in the TTL. Let us say here, I have my traffic has to go to that cloud, again come back to that Microsoft cloud, that is a higher in the traditional TTL and the availability cases. So these are the things we have to consider before moving to the cloud. And serious thoughts should be taken, should be, the checklist should be prepared in the industry-wide, what is required to be done. And we should purchase it as a bucket. We should not purchase in a piecemeal wise. So if you take the piecemeal wise, you will end up with the cost which is a much higher than we expect. That is.
Thank you, Mr. Patra. And I know some of you would have experienced this. I see smiles in the room. If I ask a show of hands, I don't know how many of you will honestly raise your hand, so I will not ask that question. But I think this is, without naming any cloud provider, and I have AWS here, I'll ask Lalit to also respond to that in a minute. But I think this is a very important insight. And the reason I asked Mr. Patra to share this with you is because each one of you are at different stages, in your cloud journey. And some of you, as I said, would be well ahead of the curve, and some of you are catching up and are planning to catch up. I think the fact that when we talk about the benefits of the cloud, there are a lot of benefits. But the whole idea about security by design, security by default, and security from the start has to be emphasized, by the CISO function if it is, not part of the conversation yet. Like Mr. Patra mentioned, a lot of the security functionalities were an afterthought, right? Whether it is email security, whether it is device security, many other things. And then it becomes, difficult to kind of put it as part of the adoption curve. So just, I think one of the key takeaways is, as and when you're planning different, based on your different applications that you're planning, how do you go back to the drawing board and say, where is the security, here embedded from the beginning? And does it cover all my key pillars, right from my identity layer to my data layer, right? So that you have that higher level of assurance that yes, this application or this service is ready to move to the cloud, and I have, got what I wanted, and it's not an afterthought. Okay, ma'am, I would like to call on your experience, because ICICI Bank and the group has been quite ahead of the curve, and you've seen these experiences well. How is the bank dealing with this? What are the best practices the bank has put in place to avoid these kinds of situations?
Okay. So I would say some of the issues that he mentioned, they are true. But a good design and probably thinking from the start, security, getting involved from the start, helps to, I wouldn't say completely avoid, but helps to be aware and helps to have a plan as we go forward to close. So in terms of awareness, a cloud journey, I think some of the concepts such as security of the cloud and security in the cloud, what is the CSP going to do? He is responsible only for the security of the cloud, but security in the cloud is the bank's responsibility. And if I am putting my landing zone, how am I going to design it? Which model of service am I going to take? Is it IaaS, SaaS, PaaS? Each of these is a subject by itself. It has a different set of security concerns and different set of solution. I'm just linking it to say, if you go and shop on Amazon for some electronic machine, and you ask for that, you will get something from 500 rupees to maybe 50,000 rupees also. And the devil is in detail, where each of this has different, everything is, there is a price. So if you start the journey saying is cloud is going to save me cost, it is complete myth. It will never happen. You have to make it happen, and that is where the concept of FinOps comes in. And initially you may actually spend more, but with a clear strategy, you may not be reducing it, but I'm sure you will be able to put it in a range. Now, are you going to do IIS alone? If you are going to do SaaS, then for each of these, I think having a broad security framework helps. And what first is what you're going to put in the cloud. In an IAS kind of thing, as Lalit mentioned, when you're going to set up your zone, what kind of security are you building? Are you going to have your own firewalls, IPS, or you are going to use the services of the cloud service provider? If you are going to use the services, then do you fully know it? I think the most critical components are having the skills who understand these nitty-gritties, and our ability as a security function to pass this knowledge and information across the organization. It's not an easy job, I agree. But thankfully what is happening is those news coming every day where somebody's breached, something has happened. Most of you would have known that the news around Google, where the pension accounts, where it was an error at the back end while it was restored. I think some of these things is actually helping to arouse the interest of even general your company to understand it better. That's a good thing. But I wouldn't say it's an easy job. It's a tough job. And leaving alone IAS, SaaS, PaaS, your normal business outsourcing, even there cloud is coming in picture indirectly. And finally, your organization is at risk. Suppose there is you engage with a vendor who's providing you service, and he is sitting on cloud, and your critical data is sitting, and if he is breached, you have a risk. So I would say there is a direct and there is an indirect. When you are going for a project where you are going to adopt some SaaS solution, at least there is a discussion, there is a deliberation, you define, and you would have your security framework against which you would assess. You would largely know the risks and the plan to mitigate the risk, but there are these indirect things which are going on cloud through services, and having a more visibility on that is required. It's a journey. I'm sure, like the examples that he gave, each one would have some examples, but I guess if doing it in a controlled way, so that even if there is a problem, you know in time and you can correct in time. For example, resilience. You say there's a general feeling that cloud means availability, cloud means all time available. Yeah, there would be availability zones. They would have multiple availability zones within a city or within a state, and they would also have alternate zone in a different seismic zone state. However, everything doesn't come by default, and it is a cost. Are you going for cold setup? Are you going for warm setup? Are you going for hot setup? All these things are factors, and that is the detailing which helps to be clear about what is the final cost and what is the final availability. We started the session saying that CIA, confidentiality, availability, integrity. Each of these circles will have its own set of things to be resolved and to be clear about before you jump in.
No, thank you, ma'am. That was a very nice answer, and you shared truly in terms of the what and the how within the organization and your experience. Lalit, I'll call you from as a service provider. How would you help our audience address these concerns like security by design, cost management? There's so much in fact there on the cloud. I mean, it's not like clients don't have options or the architects don't have options in terms of what can be done, but it's usually that there's so much of information that it requires somebody to sit down and help and architect that. How is AWS helping organizations address these concerns around security, complexity, cost, etc.? If you want to add on to that.
See, the first thing is what's the where are we standing in terms of security in the industry today? Security, and this is controversial, security has become an accounting job. Because we want to account for every configuration change, every kind of a risk. We want to account all the changes. Understand all the changes. We want to document that. Now, how do we manifest that? One is, of course, security in the cloud and off the cloud. The very first thing that we drive is through regulatory bodies. For example, MATI empanelment of the cloud service provider. If you look at MATI has published a list of cloud service provider. These cloud service providers are audited by MATI STQC auditors. And apart from this, as AWS, we have been investing in India as a region, and our region in Hyderabad, which is the second region after Mumbai. Mumbai was launched in 2016. There is another 3.7 billion investment which has happened. Now, this is not only in terms of investment, but rather enabling people in India. Skill enablement. There are 4 million people which has been trained in last 5 years that we have done. So now coming to security as an accounting function. The security as an accounting function, one higher guardrail is MATI, which is saying, hey, these are the cloud service provider or the SaaS services which we have audited, and you could utilize them. The second guardrail is industry specific, which is coming from probably from RBI, which is coming from certain. Now, these secondary guardrails are defining the various regulations around data localization, data storage, processing, and then if there is any kind of a new vulnerability comes in, for example, all of you must dealt with certain sending advisory or RBI sending an advisory that, hey, this is a new vulnerability. What is your response? Are you ready for this kind of vulnerability or not? So essentially, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make security more and more accountable. It's no longer going to be a wizard job like, hey, it's all about hacking. No. It is, we are at a stage where we can account for every configuration. And that's exactly the maturity we need to move the regulatory workload to cloud.
Got it. Lalit, just a follow-up question on that. I mean, great to know the work that you're doing with MATI, great to know the work that you're doing with the regulatory bodies here. Again, now coming back to our audience here, the concern of course comes back to cost management, security management, visibility, compliance management. How is AWS helping them in terms of anything that's native? One is tooling, second is skilling, specifically for example for the banking industry in India. Are there any initiatives that AWS is taking to address the banking specific requirements of India?
Dusmanta mentioned a very good example that, hey, if I start considering this, there are so many options and probably I have to log everything and then the cost increases. And ma'am also gave an example that it's not going to be on day one. We have to understand various options. There are various mechanisms by which cost could be saved or planning could be done. There's complete FinOps operation that happens on it. However, while moving to the cloud, one of the key things that we need to remember is that we're moving to the cloud because our application needs are changing. And one of the technology pattern here is my network, my data center is not my perimeter now. Identity is my perimeter. That means there are going to be huge amount of logging. Now, and there has to be a compliance reporting as well. So there are a couple of things that we have built around compliance so that we have complete visibility. The new generation tool, see, we can't solve the new security challenges with the old tooling. So that's why there's a new generation of services being created. You might hear the terms like CSPM, data service, data security posture management module, ASPM, application security posture management module. These are the new terms which are evolving in newer capability, which can keep up with the requirement of security. In order to do so, we provide architecture pattern and guidance. AWS provides something on open banking, how banking application can be deployed and what kind of a visibility can be set up. I'll just give one example is largely, we were talking about SOC. In SOC, which all log lines we take in, and all these log lines become heavy and heavier as we go into a B2C kind of a model. Our majority of applications are going into that model or integrating with a fintech. That means there's going to be a huge, large volume of log data. Maybe my traditional SOC SIM environment will not work. So we have to relook at that and start moving the security towards where the source of event is. Not everything needs to be solved by a SOC. So we have to leverage more and more native tooling around it. There is a complete, what we do for this is when we engage with a customer, we do a complete migration workshop and design a security blueprint for them on how your landing zone will look like, and how various control will provide what kind of visibility. Again, we're going to come back to that checklist of how you can become more accountable for your workload in the cloud.
No, thanks, Lalit, for that. So, friends, again, I think the takeaway from what we were just deliberating, second point is that cloud service providers are building a lot of these controls to help you with your security requirements, compliance requirements, monitoring requirements. As ma'am also said, the devil is in the details, right? How do you call these out early, right? So the step one is being part of that journey. Step two is insisting security by design and security by default to be added into the conversation. And then step three is having that conversation with your service provider and saying, show me the details, let me decide. Right? And like in Mr. Patra's case, saying that don't tell it to me after the fact, bring it up front. I would like to know what are my options, whether it is data security, identity security, network security, but bring it up front into the conversation. So I think the key takeaway is there are options out there. While we hear a lot of incidents, breaches about the cloud platform, I think a lot of that can be addressed if these options are discussed at length, upfront, in detail, and you're made aware of what are your options out there, right? At this time, I know we have few minutes to go. I'd really like to get some of your challenges that you would like, or some of the questions that you would like to ask, my fellow panelists that we haven't spoken about so far, and that you think could be relevant for the rest of us as well. Does anybody who would like to ask a question to us? Yes, I see a hand up there.
Thanks to Designate. Actually, on the speech from Patra, we everybody get the how much he has experienced in the cloud adoption and other things actually. And here, whenever we go for the cloud adoptions or usage of the cloud and other things, we felt a lot of difference with the in-house application setup and cloud usage of cloud. Say for example, in in-house package, if you want to make any change or any requirement or something, we could be able to do within a short span of time, within our organization and approval and other things. But in case of cloud adoption, there is a lot of approvals from their end, and if we want to change any configuration level changes or something, it took a lot of time. So I think we did not reach such level of maturity. Is it possible? Is it correct or not? I don't know. This is my concern. Second thing is, even in RB guidelines, we got that cloud adoption only on the part of outsourcing, and not a detailed guidelines on the part of cloud adoption with respect to security level or something. That's another concern that I could feel. Just want to share here. Thank you.
No, thank you, sir, for bringing that question. So I'll just rephrase it, and then I'll ask each one of you to kind of chime in. One is, it's easier to get approvals for in-house application rollouts much faster, but anything to do with cloud, is much slower. And how do you address that in your environment? And then the second one was related to RBI guidelines. While there is guidelines around outsourcing, is what's the point of view or the guidance in terms of cloud security and compliance? So
Um, I think everybody goes through that journey of cloud taking time. He talked about approvals happening for internal things faster and cloud taking a lot of time. Though he talked about the cloud CSP taking time, but we did face the issues about the users complaining about InfoSec taking a lot of time, and that would be coming as an escalation, because every time there is a new project, it uses a different kind of service. Its architecture is different, so the risks are different, and the InfoSec team is not built in with dozens of cloud experts, so they are also learning. So that was the time when we you would continuously get escalations about ISG delaying projects. So it was on the other side. But I guess it's so how we addressed it is we tried to create a catalog of services, so that say, for example, if say database has a PaaS or some web server has a PaaS. So if you narrow down the set of services, you do your complete homework on it in terms of the risks and mitigations and the design that you would want or the architecture you would want on usage of those services. And based on that, if you are comfortable, and if the guidance is, if you use these services, probably things are much faster because the basic work is done. But if you bring in a new service, obviously it is going to take time, because the security team is also going to learn, understand, dialogue. One thing which we did face is with the cloud service providers, and I think it is changing, it will change over a period of time, is the knowledge of the CSPs here in India. So what would happen is, when you would ask questions, the local people wouldn't have answers. So they would send it to people in US, and it would have its own cycle. Then there would be some communication gaps, and the answer would come which would not be linked to the question, and there would be a few iterations, and before you know, it's 10 days over. So that was also a problem. Slowly we are starting to see a change in the problem where, like he said, you do a detailed workshop, you either fly in the related experts and ensure that the bank is brought up to a speed and you have a fair knowledge about how those things work. That was the first part. The second part is, I think, the RBI outsourcing guidelines. They are pretty. The scope it covers. It covers about identity access management. It covers about your DRBCP. It covers about data security. So largely I would say the domains are readily covered. It might not have gone to the granular level of, very, very prescriptive, but largely those domains are covered. Security domains are covered.
Mr. Patra, if you would like to add something.
Like that, the availability of the hands-on engineers are really scarce. That is the reason they are maintaining a pool of engineers sitting at some location, and they will keep on changing whenever there is a problem is ticket raised by the vendor with the banks and other things. So there is a requirement of, we do not know how many people are working on the cloud. Let us say we have taken a firewall or any kind of preventive device. We know this is the L1, this is the L2, this is L3 total. This is the count of person we are on-prem managing. But we do not know how many people are managing those assets which are in control of the CSP. So that is the reason we made that time delay is happening, and that can be raised through the SLA and other things, so that we can put out some SLAs and penalties clauses, so that can become a stringent kind of thing.
Thank you. I hope that gave some answers and some ideas about how to address that. I see there's a question here as well, Vinod, if you want to.
Yeah. I just wanted to know from the panel, what are the typical applications which are first taken to the cloud, be it IaaS or PaaS or SaaS? Then whether any core banking or any transactional systems like treasury or cash management has been moved to the cloud. And thirdly, with the anvil of the DPDP Act, anything to do with customer data, whether anything which has customer data has been moved to the cloud. And what are the precautions which have to be taken in case customer data is going to the cloud? Thank you.
Okay, great question again. Ma'am, if I may ask you to take that.
Yeah. So, core banking, no, as of now, none of the core banking is on cloud. and one of the important factor, obviously, data confidentiality and all is there. But the most important part is what Lalit said in the beginning. The modernization of the application is required to really take a benefit from the cloud. You can't take your core banking on a Solaris system with a Oracle database as it is on the cloud. You can take it, probably it will be just an IAS, but what will you get out of it? Other than the additional cost, you will get nothing out of it. So unless and until those core banking applications have been made cloud native, containerized, I don't think, and most of us, if you say core banking, the most of the banks here would be using the common core banking application. And those things are, I think, a work in progress. That is one part of it. The second part of it, in terms of transaction banking solutions, we are looking at some of the solutions which are cloud native and which are offered as cloud services, not necessarily SaaS. It could be a dedicated instance for the bank. So that is what it is as of now. With DPDP coming in, I believe if you see the RBI outsourcing guidelines and they consider cloud as outsourcing, it clearly says data encryption at rest, data encryption in motion, and many of the cloud service providers are actually working on data confidentiality while in process, which is generally called as confidential computing. It doesn't exist for all services, but that's a work in progress. So I believe that's the path. If your data is completely encrypted when it is at rest, when it is in motion, and when it is in getting processed, that may be the way forward if you're going to take very sensitive applications on the cloud.
Mr. Patra, if you want to add anything.
Actually, moving the CBS, the critical application to the cloud is a really challenge, and especially on the exit policy. Let us say we wanted to change some of the CBS application or change of CSP. That will be a lot of challenge. The exit policy says that we can change, but it will have a drastical problem in the data return back. So, in which format they are storing, how the tape is getting retrieval, and how the same tape can be retrieved by us or not. So that is become a challenges. So moving the CBS is really what is called more strategies need, and that we can go for the private cloud instead of public. We should go for the private cloud. Thank you.
Thank you. Lalit, coming to you, I'm sure AWS would have done this journey on moving banks and applications around banks from on-prem to cloud in many other geographies, at different stages. And I'm sure there would be some who are already running core banking. What has been that experience? And if you can share, with the audience here, saying how do they address this need, this concern for security, privacy, compliance? How do they start, and how can AWS give them that assurance, over time?
Coming back to CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability. One of the key things that our cloud service provider, and AWS specifically, does is there is no operator access. So when we say that we provide a platform which is confidential platform, that means a client will always have control over their data, and all the data related decisions are with the client. Plus, in our platform, in AWS, there is no operator access, which is being validated by a third party as well. That means we have no visibility on what kind of application you run. If we have given you an infrastructure or any other service, we have no visibility and we can't look at the data. This is being validated, certified, so no operator access. That opens the door for majority of our core banking customers in other geographies as well. In India today, are there any payment-related application running from banks? Fintech, of course, 90% of fintech are on AWS, so they run, but banks as well are running payment-related workload. So that's still there. While RBI master guideline does not say very specifically on confidential computing, SEBI do call out that. Confidential computing meaning that your operator should not have visibility. There is an end-to-end encryption on the platform. So that means at any point of time, even if an insider threat, they cannot access the data.
Thank you, Lalit. I know there's a question here. If you may want to. No time. Okay. Again, thank you, Lalit. Just to wrap up. Friends, I know there would be a lot of questions still dwelling on your minds. Some may have got answered. Some may need to be answered. We would be happy to kind of, talk to you during the break. I'm around. The PwC team is around as well. We have few cloud security experts who would be happy to take questions. But I think the key takeaway as you look at the cloud journey, one, that it is inevitable. It is happening, whether we like it or not. It's how do we embrace it and be ready for it while others are catching up. Because that's going to be your core competitive advantage in the market tomorrow. The newer applications, the innovation, the business, drivers are all kind of, coming up and being developed there. So it's more like, it's not a question of if, but when in terms of cloud. And the other things that, I know we all are worried about is it's complex. It is complex. I need to upskill myself, my team in terms of skills, resources. Yes, there's work to do, but that's also an opportunity for us. And that's the challenge in there. And again, the other part from a cloud service provider standpoint, not just to Lalit, my friend from AWS, but the other CSPs as well, that's an opportunity for them to come out there and, engage and enable. And I clearly see there's that need for trust and transparency, right? As Mr. Patra mentioned, saying that even if we are ready, I just am not feeling, confident enough. That trust is missing. So I think the onus is also on the cloud service providers to proactively engage, bring in that trust, bring in the transparency, share with you that pain and that journey in terms of, moving to the cloud and adopting the cloud in a safe and secure manner. And I think, again, in terms of expertise, in terms of skills, in terms of the experience that is required, there is definitely clear shortage there. And that's where I think we partner, right? As PwC, we partner with a lot of our clients to kind of, enable them, bring them up to speed, augment, wherever required in terms of skills and expertise, and provide you with that, with that extra pair of independent eyes and ears and hand and feet to support you on the journey. So I think it's a collective responsibility, right? In the cloud world, we call it the shared responsibility. But I think in the industry, each one of us comes together. You play your part by upskilling and enabling yourself. The service provider leans forward in terms of trust and transparency. And we as knowledge partners come and work with you independently to handhold you in that journey based on the expertise and the resources and the strengths that we carry. So again, friends, it was a wonderful, last 30 to 45 minute session. I hope there were a lot of good takeaways and some aha moments from this session. Would love to interact with all of you, offline. And thank you again for my fellow panelists, Lalit, Madhavi ma'am, Mr. Patra. Great insights. A round of applause, please, for my panelists. Awesome. And for my audience as well. Excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. I would request all panelists for a group photograph, please. And may I invite Shri K. Srinivas Rao to present a memento to our distinguished panelists. Thanks indeed to the panelists for the insightful discussion on the topic. And thank you, audience, for making the discussions more intriguing.